Hey, Chris, welcome to another week of you and me. Anyway,
Something like that.
I really thought we should do a follow up to last week's talk about managing Office 365 environments and how
Yeah.
what people are doing around their cloud, and got me thinking. I just popped the banner up. Who's watching your Office, because I think you've got some interesting excerpts from how Office 365 and cloud services are being managed, and we probably should share them.
Yeah, let's go with we can tag off last week. So I'll give you a follow up. I'll give you a little insight into what happened. So that prospect chose not to actually have us go through and look at their configuration and actually properly secure it. They took some of our tips and stuff like that, and then they said that they were going to implement them themselves.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, no, they didn't really follow through with us, a professional, actually looking at it. It was somebody that's just going to be their office manager that's going to go through and try to figure it out. So I'm not
So
sure
just
it's a good role, but
let's back up for a second. So
yep,
last week it was an Office 365 environment that
yep,
didn't have multi-factor, didn't have a whole lot of security enabled, and
yep.
why
They
don't you
sent out over
recap?
500 phishing emails that included multi-factor authentication bypass for 365, which ended up going to more than 70 people clicked on the link. We got the
Nice.
link. They got the link taken down. I told them to contact the company. They did get the link taken down eventually, but like, at the time I looked, it was over 70 people had clicked on the link and went to that site. So obviously, we don't know how many people submitted their credentials and got them they're stolen. But under our guidance, we told them to go to their lawyer because they needed to formulate a response to this because obviously they're in a field that, quite frankly, shouldn't be sending out phishing emails. I mean, nobody should,
Yeah,
but like
right.
they're kind of in a regulated industry, so until
Because
we, yeah,
that goes to the thing where people say, "Well, I don't care if my email gets compromised." Well, it's the reputation of this company, and people trust them. That email from them are good. So now you've got all these phishing emails out there. Yeah, they
yeah,
definitely have to form a response. But you know, I know you said you talked to them about
yeah.
you talked.
Their lawyer formulated it, and we showed them how to get a list of the emails they'd sent out, and they were supposed to send it out. Now, what's funny is they sent it to us, and we never got the letter from the lawyer, so I don't even know how much they followed up with
Oh boy.
because like we were the one. Like, obviously, we got it first, and we went back and we contacted them and we helped them with a little bit of instant response. They don't have cybersecurity insurance. They don't have any instant response plan internally. They don't have IT. They're managing this themselves, and they think that they're fine, and clearly they're not. And they send this out. So, you
So
know,
actually, that actually gives me a really good idea for for next week's call. Let's see if we can get a hold of a data breach and cybersecurity attorney to hop on a call and answer some questions about some of this stuff, and we'll go from there.
oh man, we get a lawyer on here. We're gonna have to preface it though. We're gonna have to say, hey, look, this is for educational purposes only. Because again, everybody, you should seek your own counsel. Like obviously, any kind of advice you hear and everything, make sure you pass that through your counsel. But that should be good. I'm
Yeah,
excited. I
yeah,
wanna
because I got somebody in mind. I think I can have him hop on a call with us. So they actually do some incident response planning and manage
awesome.
the whole process for people, because people don't realize the first there's three people you need to call when an incident happens, and they've got your IT guys for containment, you got your insurance company, and an attorney. So and not necessarily in that order,
It
but
might be a PR firm if it's bad enough. You might want to add the fourth one.
yeah.
It just kind of illustrates this whole situation like that we're dealing with that prospect. Just kind of illustrates like how unprepared businesses are. And you put up that banner about, hey, like who's watching your office. I go back to what I said last week. It's like, can you please just give a shit about your customers? You When you send that stuff out and you lead to a company being breached, and it's your fault. Like again, we'll talk to the lawyer next week, and we'll ask him. We'll say, hey, can they get sued? And I'm pretty sure that the answer is going to be yes.
Especially if they're a regulated industry to begin with, and they had specific
Yeah,
guidelines that they needed to implement that they ignored.
yeah. Well, yeah, and then they come back and they subpoena us, and we have to go if we have to go in there and talk about it from a negligence standpoint. I mean, I'll just guess. I'm going to gaslight them, not because I want to, because I'll tell the truth, and the truth is going to be gaslighting them. And
Yeah.
it sucks, but we have to take accountability and responsibility for our networks to make sure that we take care of in our situations, and make sure that we take care of our customer base, take care of our vendors, take care of, like, it's all of our responsibility. This isn't just one company's responsibility. This is all of ours.
And I'm not sure if we talked about it last week, but you just brought a really good point is, Microsoft isn't necessarily watching for bad guys coming in or even know if your account's been compromised because, it might look like legitimate logins and, they
Yeah,
don't know where your users are. That's up to you to be a police.
that goes back to the shared responsibility model in cloud, right? Microsoft is responsible to keep their infrastructure running and keep it safe, but you're responsible for your logins. You're responsible for what's done with your data on your accounts. That's your
So,
responsibility.
so,
And by
so,
your,
so
I
we,
mean company.
so we've actually rambled a little bit here.
Yeah.
From what I wanted to talk about is like the incident that you were talking about.
Mhm.
Um, who was managing their Office 365 environment and making sure everything was kosher and good?
An office manager with no training.
So she added accounts and deleted accounts.
Running as a global administrator.
Okay.
Person was running as a global administrator, and then basically used ignorance as an excuse for it not being set up properly. Said that somebody
And
set it up 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and this is and so I don't know what's going on. And we offered to do an assessment and go through and do security stuff, and they turned us down. Like, go through and actually review all of the settings and make sure that's set to best practices, and we got turned down
wow.
after they'd already been breached.
I bet a future attorney would want to know that from the fact that now they're just ignoring recommendations and hoping for the best.
I don't know what they're
Wow.
doing.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
And
So
again, I'm not trying to gaslight companies, but this is really what happened. This is really what's going on, and we're trying to, like, I'm following up with them, trying to get them to do something to where we can at least go in there and maybe do a project to kind of at least get it secured to like whatever today's standards are. But this isn't a today thing. This is a forever thing, right? Like, things change, settings change. Like, we need to stay on top of this.
oh yeah. I've been talking to some people about some FTC safeguard stuff, and I'm like, there's no one document that I can give you today, or one little project that we can do to make sure you're compliant, because everything's changing, the risks are changing, and everything needs to be monitored to know what's going on. So, guys, security is another expense.
And if you look at the risks in your business, like for FTC, right, and you look at the risks in general, risks are always changing. They're always changing. When you
Sure.
hire a new employee, when you fire an employee, that's like something. It's changing. When you add a new software application,
I talked to somebody yesterday
I
who
mean,
just fired his web guy, and it's okay. So we're going through the risk assessment on that. And well, what did the web guy really have? Turns out the web guy had some private sites that were up there that had a bunch of private company confidential data that could potentially be sold. So, like you said, the risks are always changing. You really have to understand where that data is. And I know you've had companies some bigger companies you've talked to that don't even know what they have.
oh yeah, we're gonna turn this into a weekly rant. If let me put it this way: if you're worth more than, let's say, a few $1,000,000, you should know every asset that you have. You should have strategy in place to know this. You should have risk strategies in place in the company. You should know your risk profile. You should know your tolerance. You should know that stuff. If you're a $150 to $200 million company and you still have those problems, there needs to be a discussion that happens. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is at the top of some of these organizations, their leadership hasn't got the message yet. They were maybe homegrown companies, and they haven't got the message. And they're worried about selling, and they're worrying about their business, but they're completely ignoring the risks that could have the biggest impact to their business. And I'm not talking just cyber threats. I'm talking Fires, disaster
Mhm.
recovery. So it's not all about hacking. There's other things in the business that we need to prepare for from a risk standpoint. And if you don't understand those risks, then you can really put your business at a big disadvantage. And it doesn't get easier as you get bigger. It gets more complicated. It gets much more expensive to manage and maintain, and it's more costly to the business when something bad happens.
So I think, we've been ranting, but I think we need to give people an action item for the week. And the action item that I'm going to throw out there for people is like, go figure out and go find out who has administrative access to your email system. Is it just the IT team? Okay. Is it just your service provider? Or is it spread out across multiple people because you're a small company and the business owner you have it as a business owner? If you do, let's talk about that, because that's a whole other problem. But really understand who can make changes, because these global administrator accounts people access every piece of data in your environment.
Yeah, I got one more to add to that. Find out who has access to control your domain name. So whatever your domain name is, if it's a .com, .io, .net, whatever, who has access to that too? Because what if, and this is a big what if somebody that you don't know has access to it just changes your email one day and starts sending out emails, and you stop receiving emails and they start sending emails from your domain and you don't even know what's going on? And trust me, if you don't have control of that domain, we just dealt with this with another prospect, which is a customer now, a few weeks ago. They fired somebody who had access to all their domain names and just left, and it was tied to that person's personal cell phone. And guess what? They couldn't get access to these domains. So they had to go through the process of trying to seize the account, which took about 2 weeks. So think about that. Understand, so what Bob said, find out who has admin rights to your email, who can make changes to it, but also your domain name, the thing that is your mark on the web and for your email. Find out who has rights to that. Make sure you have that under control and make sure you have that secured.
So you just created a whole other topic for us just to talk about DNS and domain names.
We probably shouldn't talk about DNS. Basically, if somebody has control of your domain, they have control of your company. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
Right.
Anyway, guys, go figure out who has control of your domain name and your global administrator processes, because that's going to save your company and your data.
And then after that, figure out what assets you have in your company. Software, data, and hardware. Please make a spreadsheet, something simple, at least. I'm really begging you at this point.
Chris is begging.
please. We've helped too many companies that just didn't know anything. They fire one company or they fire one person, and they literally don't know what they have. And it is such a struggle to find it. It is not an easy thing. It's a ton of work, and start now, please.
Create a real plan and let's move forward. Have a great week, everyone.
I've had no idea I was gonna beg on this call, so appreciate that. We'll see you next week.
It's all good, guys, and see everyone next week, and try and stay safe.